Buzz host Howard Kurtz, who covers all of how politics are covered and has for decades. Howie, how would you characterize today between the Pelosi comments and the Clooney editorial and two of the top people in the Obama campaign speaking out forcefully?
Another painful day for Joe Biden. And I'm glad we're doing this segment, Martha, because you can run big pictures of George Clooney and just stick me in a little box. But look, the reason this is significant, even more so than Stephen Colbert and Jon Stewart abandoning President Biden, is this, the quotes that you read. One, he was at the fundraiser. He's a friend, lifelong Democrat. And Clooney says he was like he was at the debate. Given what you just reminded us of, that's not good. Secondly, Clooney says that every congressman, every House member, every governor he's talked to agrees with him privately, but won't say so publicly. And I think when you combine those things, it's not that George Clooney is a globally famous actor. It is that he is painfully talking about his friend. And I don't think that Joe Biden necessarily is going to be pushed out of this race. If he doesn't change his mind, there's nothing anybody can do to force him out of this race. But the noise level and the pressure is really getting to be almost deafening.
So these voices were pretty strong today. One person I spoke to said that, because of the NATO proceedings that are going on, the momentum that is building will be even stronger going into tomorrow and the next day as you leave the NATO moment behind, since the president is speaking out with world leaders. I mean, you can't push out the president, technically, but if the former president, Obama, or Nancy Pelosi or Chuck Schumer were to sit down and have a heart-to-heart with him about the polls and about his legacy, that could be very persuasive. Could it not, Howie?
Oh, absolutely. If the leaders of his party, now they've been reticent, this big revolt that was going to take place on Capitol Hill, a lot of politicians are holding back because what if Biden stays in? What if he somehow wins? But, first of all, he should have done about 5 interviews by now, making the big buildup about Stephanopoulos, where he was low energy and was dismissing polls that he didn't like. That didn't work. I'm glad he's going to sit down with Lester Holt. But he let a lot of days go by without, having unscripted encounters with voters or with journalists. And secondly, he needs to really do a little bit of soul searching here. But the leaders of his party, I mean, it's so telling that they're saying this privately, but not publicly. And at the same time, I think that he's now saying he's going to run against the elites, which is a bit of a joke because he's been in politics for 50 years. He is the epitome of the Democratic establishment. But if these big names, not just in media, not just in politics, but even entertainers who obviously command a certain amount of attention because of their celebrity, if they are saying, I love Joe Biden, that's literally in the Clooney piece, but he needs to get out for the good of the country and the good of the Democratic Party, that's got to make Biden think twice.
Yeah, it's tough to say that he's running against the elites when the elites appear to be turning on him after he missed a big event, a big political event that Kamala Harris went to in Europe with European leaders so that he could be at that Los Angeles event to raise lots of money with all of those elites. And he certainly has spent time in the Hamptons and all the rest of the rich places drumming up money. But now he seems to think that they're not his folks. So we'll see. Howie, thank you. As always, we're happy to see you on screen. We don't need George Clooney. We're good.
Thanks,
Thank you, Howie.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.